Welcome, everybody. I'm David Clutterbuck, and with me are my two colleagues, Evija Vascenko and Craig McKenzie. We're going to be talking to you about our latest program, which is aimed at helping coaches rise above the crowd. Coaches are increasingly under threat. There's oversupply of people calling themselves coaches, accredited or not. There's a threat from commoditization, with large coaching platforms selling coaching very cheap. And there's threat from artificial intelligence, which can do a lot of what basic level coaches can do, only sometimes better. So in order to differentiate ourselves in this crowded market and to create more and more value for our clients, if we're going to focus on executives, as one of the critical markets that can make real change happen in organizations, we need a really big, solid skill set. And we're going to talk to you about how the program that we've designed for you actually helps you to deliver that. So, Evija, over to you.
Thank you, David. It has been great experience for me with this program. Working already more than 5 years and being part in delivery and seeing actually the huge impact it's making on people who go through the program. And for the new coaches who just are recently on the market and are looking how to improve their offering, it actually gives very clear understanding how they should be developing as coaches, what they need to know, what skills they need to acquire to be able to differentiate, to become interesting for executives to work with. And for very experienced coaches, it's very often was giving like a confirmation that the things we are doing are on the right track. Speaking and discussing with equals, with people who are in work with executives already like them for years, and sharing some experiences and learning also maybe some new approaches to do. So actually, I love the program and I have been part of it multiple times, and I really love seeing the impact it makes afterwards.
Great.
Yeah, thanks, Evija. Yeah, happy to jump in. Our work, and a lot of my work is around developing leaders and developing coaches. So I have a long range of experience in leadership, as well as working with executives at all levels. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, what different people mean when they say they coach executives, and what different levels that there are. One of the big challenges that coaches face is this whole idea: if they're going to target this particular market at whatever layer or level they do, they need to position themselves differently. They need to show up differently, have a different presence. And often, as I work with a lot of coaches as they develop themselves, they bump into things, both process, skill, and their own self-talk, their own way of being, that interferes with the change that they want to bring to the world through coaching. So I love this program because it really helps coaches with some foundation, some experience, take that further and figure out how they're going to focus their practice on what segment of executive and what they need to develop themselves. And actually, I just add another piece, just as in closing on that, it's just internal coaches as well. Organizations, HR, L&D, et cetera, they've trained coaches within organizations. Part of their role is to work with executives. Now, a big part of executive, senior, proven leader type of coaching is outsourced, and there's good reasons for that, and it'll probably continue to be that way. But then there's also this whole executive development stream. How do internal coaches develop capability, succession planning? There's a lot of need for that in organizations, both large and small. So this kind of program really helps and equips internal, external coaches, new and older or experienced, to either adjust or up their practice so that they can work skillfully with executives.
think pulling some of all that together, what we're seeing is that there are these new skills, particularly include being able to think systemically and see the complexity. Basic coaching helps somebody to solve some problems. It may help them to develop a new skill. But working with the clients, these executives who are working in a complex, adaptive world, helping them to see the complexity and to be able to manage that complexity more effectively. So as a team, as a coach working with these executives, we have to have a higher level of systemic understanding in order to help them grow in their systemic ability.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe some of the things that I'm noticing as well as that is, the increasing complexity of things that used to always be hard for executives, still are, decision making in an increasingly complex environment. Behavior, how do they behave? And how do they live in a much more risky environment where giving feedback or even affirmation can get them in trouble? And how do they continue to differentiate themselves as leaders within the organizations that they're a part of? One of the things that I'm doing as we have revamped this curriculum is reflecting on all of my coaching notes over the years where I've worked with very senior executives and the layers below that as well, and looked for themes and issues, what's changing, what's not changing. And also all the coaches that I work with, I'm also talking specifically to those that work with executives a lot more than others, not those who say they're executive coaches, but those who really are executive coaches. And also hear from them how things have changed. How is it different? And what are the challenges and the reasons why organizations are hiring them specifically to work with executives? So Evija, what in your experience has been shifting in your work with executives over the last 3 or 4 years?
Actually, what I have experienced, more and more executives are looking not just for coaching. They don't want me as coach sit in front of them and ask questions, but they are inviting me as a coach to be their sounding board because they feel that they have a lot of information. The information flow is huge. They have some ideas on the ways they think they might proceed, they want to proceed, some maybe creative ideas they want to use with their teams, maybe some extraordinary changes they want to make, but they don't feel safe to talk with somebody within the organization. Because sometimes they just don't want to look silly. Sometimes it's really very often question about losing the face. So they want coach as a sounding board. And when I'm asked, okay, what do you mean by sounding board? We want you to say us how it feels to you, what we share. Like to share maybe some best practices and let us think, give us some ideas, some grounds for thinking and making better decisions. And it also kind of includes that they expect that coach is having experience, if not exactly like them, but very similar experience, like being executives themselves, or having worked with many executives and seen a lot of challenges, and maybe sharing some ideas about how it has worked for other executives in similar situations, without mentioning any words, any countries, any industries, because working on a global scale, it's actually very easy to find some examples which are working. And it's not consulting, because they don't want me to say them, this is the best way for you to go. No, they just need something more than a question. The question is very powerful, but what they really ask, ask to help them in the thinking process and maybe initiate some thoughts they would never have or find themselves, or it will take too much time of them.
And this fits in so well with the ongoing research which we've been doing for some years now into how coaches grow and mature. If a mature coach, the more that they reflect on their experience, the more they learn from their experience, the more they're able to use themselves and their own wisdom. And in fact, you could almost say it's unethical not to use the wisdom that you have to support the client that you're with. So it very much aligns with the research now into how coaches evolve over their practice. And all the way through, I think we're now seeing across the world of leadership and corporations, a recognition of the need for greater science. What does the science actually say in these areas? So that begins to open up all sorts of new possibilities. So one of the studies that I did last year for the conference board, one of the outcomes of this was the revelation that many large corporations, particularly in Europe where we did the study, have recognized that a high proportion of their most senior executives basically cannot let go of command and control and suffer from imposter syndrome. Now, it's a whole evolving world to work with them on these areas, but you need a higher skill set to do so.
This is something I have experienced a lot working with executives and actually with founders of the companies, as well owners of the companies over last 7-8 years. When people who have founded the company and has developed it to a certain level, they feel that they would love to retire. At the same time, it's very hard to them to let go all the control about their company, their baby they are having. And it actually creates not completely new, but it creates completely separate niche for executive coaching. So coaching of company founders who need to step out and prepare for this step out. And it's not always about retirement. It's very important in startup world where I'm working very actively last 5 years as well, when there's certain level the company reaches and founder can become the biggest bottleneck. So, and sometimes they do recognize, but they don't have courage to say, I need to do something differently. I need to change, or I want to step out. And executive coaching actually might help it to do this very well and might help people prepare and be in peace with this.
Yeah, and I'm reflecting on a large piece of research I did over 3 months as part of our organization in China on interviewing multinational and national leaders on the challenges of developing leaders within China. So we didn't talk to HR, we talked to the leaders, mostly C-level leaders, country heads in China around the challenges. And so they talked about their own challenges, as well as the challenges of trying to help others become the kind of leaders that could take over. And that's a big space, this giving perspective and being able to find out what are the real issues, cross-cultural ethics, cross-cultural leadership, countries of companies based in other countries who would never have a local leader be a leader at the level that they aspire to. How do they work with that constraint? So there's a bunch of, I think one of the things that's really valuable about this program is just the wealth of experience that goes into it, this perspective sharing, but also that idea of helping coaches figure out where they connect and fit. And interestingly, Evija, you know, I train a lot of coaches, so I work with coaches, and one of our coaches is focused on high net worth family leadership, very specific. Others focused on the tech industry, emerging leaders within the tech industry. Another is focused particularly on environmental and future-based challenges to leaders and helping leaders navigate that. So being a coach that specializes. So there's all kinds of ways we can create value and bring perspective. And one of the more interesting experiences I had was from a client who had multiple coaches. And he said, I have a coach for this and a coach for that and a coach for that. And I'd like you to be my coach for this. And that was all about, for him at least, it was behavior. It was about becoming more aware and learning how to handle his emotions more skillfully. And again, the leaders at a high level, we have to be able to be with them and hold that space, create that environment where they're willing to allow us to challenge them. And they're willing to be in that space where they have the trust. You know, we're ethical as coaches, are confidential and solid, and we're able to have those conversations that enable them to figure out what they need to do differently in service of the organization. Very often not just in service of their career, but a deep passion for their organization. It might be really valuable for us just to reflect together on this whole idea of executive mentoring and executive coaching. And when you hear that phrase, what do we think people mean by that?
I think people mean all sorts of things because they've really not thought it through. But we can draw some pretty clear conclusions. I mean, the first thing is, what is an executive? And an executive doesn't have to be the chief executive or president of a multinational global company. An executive is somebody who is a leader responsible for other leaders. Simple as that. And anybody that's got those responsibilities is going to share a lot of common issues relating to how to get things done when you're not actually involved in the hands-on work. And that's the key to being an executive. So whether we're acting as a mentor, where we are essentially helping the person to put things into a deeper context, to structure the world around them so that they can make sense of the systems that they can see, and maybe some of the things they're not aware of that we can point them towards, or whether we're working as an executive coach. So as an executive coach, we might be helping them to make much better sense of the internal world and what they do know already. But or mixing the two things. We need some skills to be able to do that. The skills of being able to help them see themselves in the systems of which they are a part.
And actually, my experience over last years, both working with executives and also working with coaches as supervisor, it shows a lot that mentoring and coaching, when we talk about work with executives, actually merges together. It's more and more demand for both in one.
Yes.
And going back to your question, Craig, about what people mean when they say executive. It has been interesting conversations with so many coaches who's already working with executives, but even more with those who want to work with executives. When I ask, okay, whom do you want to work with? It's like, I'm thinking about C-suite executives. So C-suite of a big company, and I want to work with them. And there are two things. One, question, what makes you stand out? Why they should work with you as a coach? And second thing, which I usually have in my mind, but maybe not always I ask them. Sometimes I do. So, okay, what happens with all those people who are leading companies, leading very big projects, but who are not C-suite executives, who are owners of the companies, who are entrepreneurs, who are small business owners, but they are making decisions which are on the same level of impact, same importance for lives of people who depend on them. and I don't mean only families of all the employees who work for those companies, and some of those companies are big, but they don't have, so what's considered to be C-suite executives? Why we talk very often only about C-suite executives? And it's something which actually doesn't tend to surprise me.
And the reality from the stories that we hear from executives, coaches in supervision, is that very few of them ever start with the C-suite. You've got to get a lot of experience under your belt with a breadth of executives at different levels in different industries, in different contexts. Then you become credible.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about the array of it. You know, when I worked in a large multinational developing a leadership program, we talked about people that were tagged to be executives of the future. So young talent that was meant to be there. Emerging managers who might have potential. First-time leaders, you know, how do we support those in that journey, as well as operational and all up to proven leaders, stale leaders, CEOs whose ego is larger than the office tower that they're a part of. So all those ranges, you know, really exist. You know, and I always feel like, you know, I train a lot of coaches, so I work with them and they're like, I want to be an executive coach. And I'll be like, well, one of the questions I'll often ask them is, why would an executive hire you? You know, what is it? And what do you need to develop? So what kind of presence, way of being do you need to develop? What kind of experience or expertise? There are lots of pathways to that, growing our practice toward that level. And as Evija and I were, you know, working on reworking some of this material and updating it and changing it, with one of the things that Evija said that I really loved was just that whole thing of like, you know, smaller company leaders as well as larger company leaders. Those people that are also emerging, you know, and their companies are growing and they're finding themselves in the seat of CEO. They had the title before, it didn't mean anything, but now they actually are leading people. And how do they adapt, adjust their identity, develop that sense? So when I look at that, I just think executive coaching is just something we throw around, right? There's organizations say they train executive coaches. Well, not necessarily, because not every one of those coaches is going to be capable of doing that, but also they may not want to. So, but for those coaches that really would love to work with executives at various levels, build their practice, develop that knowledge, then, you know, I think that what we're trying to do with this program is really offer them both tools, experience, wisdom, processes, and challenge to help them adapt and grow so they can become the kind of leader that's more a coach or a mentor that's more effective in that context, if they're already doing it, or they know the pathway to create that practice that they desire. No one can stop you from coaching or mentoring leaders, except the leaders themselves, who might never want to be mentored or coached by you.
What about that? I think one of the things that executive coaches really benefit from understanding is that in an organization, where you are in the hierarchy does not represent necessarily the influence that you have or the need for coaching that you have. And I'm thinking, for example, of a particular team that is responsible for sustainability in an organization, or diversity and inclusion in an organization. These are teams which have an enormous remit, an enormous set of responsibilities, and they may be in the hierarchy quite low down, but the impact they have on that organization is much higher than perhaps people 2 or 3 layers above. And so recognizing that executive coaching is about who has the need to exert influence over the organization. And allied to that is one of the skills that we've been researching in recent years, which is politics within all organizations. How as a coach, do you help your clients to really work effectively with politics?
Mm.
There's a lovely book, it's a very short book from South Africa. It says, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. And so increasingly we're finding that executive coaches are working with people inside the organizations to help them become authentically politically astute.
Mm.
I'm thinking about things which are important when we are working as executive coaches with organization. And very often this importance is not only helping the executive to understand the environment, but sometimes also grasping environment ourselves and understanding the systems and the systems of systems which are behind there and everything which impacts. And it helps us to ask questions because executive is not alone there. It's not he and his leaders, he or she and their leaders, but it's everything which is happening around. Those are influencers, those are power games, politics, some things which happen with organizational culture and how this impacts organizational goals, of course, and both qualitative and quantitative. So everything which is there around. And we as executive coaches, we need to have skills and knowledge enough to be able to ask the right question. And if we are working as mentors, it's better to have some experience in the field as well and much deeper understanding on how it all works together.
Well, and there's this whole sector of leaders who are exiting organizations that want to build a career as a consultant, mentor, or coach. And this is the kind of program that meets them at their level and would be a great space for them to transition. Even if they're not sure whether they're going to be a mentor or a coach or how they're going to make that transition. But there are many leaders who are leaving their organizations. They're done with their career, but they want to continue to add value. And there's certain things that they love. And this program is part of what we do. Is we really want to help you figure out your practice and develop how you're uniquely going to express, but also make sure you're aware of what are some of the challenges in various dimensions of both the structure, the ethics, the contracting, how you build relationships, and help them create that story of how they're going to have the kind of impact that they'd love to have as a mentor or a coach on new generations, existing generations of leaders. And you know, that phrase often used is, you know, I want to give back. Well, you know, we ask questions, what do you want to give back? And do leaders need what you want to give back? And if they do, then how can you develop yourself so that you can do that really, really skillfully?
We hope that some of the ideas that we've shared with you in this very short video will have piqued your interest, will have made you reflect upon how you can add greater value as a coach, working with executives at all levels and in all kinds of context, or however you choose. We want you to think about how will you become the coach that your clients potentially need. And that's what this mixture of science and technology is all about, helping you to become the coach or the mentor to executives who desperately need your help.
Yeah, and we would all sort of make a brief comment yeah, we'd love to have this conversation with you, and we'd love to carry it on. If you're interested in working with executives in any capacity, then this is the kind of program that will be that unique blend, as David's talked about, but would also bring the experience of a wide and diverse faculty into that learning. And it's an opportunity to focus your practice. So I guess from my thought and in my work with coaches and mentors, I'm really thinking about, if you are interested in focusing your practice on developing executives, developing leaders of leaders, influencers of organizations, then this program could really be a great step in helping you to develop the skill set, the tool set, and the capability to step into that space with effectiveness. And I think that's what we're really passionate about, is helping you create value for your clients and being effective. There's a lot of executive coaches. There's less effective executive coaches, and we would love for you to be an effective executive coach and or mentor.
And
What inspires you, Evija?
there is one promise we can certainly make related to this course. You will leave with more self-confidence for working with executives in any role you choose, whether it's coach or mentor, or sometimes even consultant or trainer, because the knowledge we will be sharing and you will be learning, it will be helpful in all roles you will be using. And you will have answers to the questions you have, which will help to your self-confidence. At the same time, also we can promise that you will leave with some questions for which answers you will need to find yourselves. And you will need to find a way how to build your practice the way you would love working afterwards. And you will enjoy really when working with executives.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Evija. So hope to see you on one of the programs.